Council meeting of the City of St. Peter. It is Monday, November 28th, 2022 at 7 p.m. We are now called to order. We're all rise for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe everybody has a copy of the agenda. Are there any revisions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Next up, approval of the minutes. Minutes are printed on pages 5 through 10 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as distributed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. First up on our agenda, we have scheduled time for visitors to comment. Are there any members of the audience who'd like to comment on any agenda item? Hearing none. We have time on the calendar, time on our agenda for general visitor comments. Is there a member of the audience who'd like to address the council on any matter whatsoever? Hearing none, we will move on to the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins with a memo on page 11 of the packet and concludes with a resolution on page 25. The consent agenda includes the following employee appointments with wages as indicated: Emily Edel and Jen Edel, Deanna Snow and Taylor Sickler, all part-time recreation leaders at the wages indicated. The schedule of disbursements for November 10th through November 23rd. And that's it. It's a short consent agenda. If there's a motion and a second, we can answer any questions.
So moved. Second?
Any questions or discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Oh, we already got that, didn't we? Yes. All right. We have a motion and a second, so call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. First item of new business is the adoption of ordinance modifying, we have no unfinished business before us tonight. We're going to move right on to new business. And the first item is the adoption of an ordinance modifying City Code MS4 stormwater regulations, beginning with a memo on page 26 of the packet.
Mayor, members, the information is within your packet. The ordinance is not included, although you reviewed an entire ordinance a couple of cycles ago at a workshop. So that ordinance was published to come before you tonight. So we have not had time to get it fully codified. And so my hope is that you will take action to direct staff or table this for your December 12th meeting, at which time it will be done, and we'd ask that you take action. The reason for tabling is because, as I mentioned earlier, we provided notice that you would consider it tonight, which you can certainly do. We're just not quite ready for you yet. But by taking action and directing it to be on the 12th, you meet the criteria related to the open meeting law and requirements for notice.
Any questions for Todd? So we would be looking for a motion and a second to table this to our
December
12th meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Hearing no questions, is there a motion to table?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Voice vote.
All right, all those in favor to table, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This will be tabled to our December 12th meeting. Next up, adoption of a resolution adopting updated drug and alcohol testing procedures for MRVT transit employees.
Mayor, members, I think it's important to note as a part of this that this is just for MRVT or St. Peter employees that are assigned to MRVT. As you may recall, MRVT really doesn't have any employees whatsoever. They're all contract service through the city of St. Peter. So MRVT pays the city of St. Peter. We're required under the FTA and Office of Transit of the state of Minnesota to have an approved drug and alcohol policy. This is something that we review on a regular basis, and new changes have come forward from FTA, which is the Federal Transportation Administration. So those changes and other requests from the Office of Transit DOT have been incorporated into the new policy. A couple of meetings ago at MRVT, there was discussion that this would be coming forward. Again, this does not apply to any of your commercial driver's license that might work on Pete's Crew, as an example. This is strictly just for MRVT folks, or those folks that are assigned to MRVT. What you see in your packet has met review criteria from the Office of Transit at the state of Minnesota. If you fail to have a policy, or a policy that doesn't meet the requirements that FTA or Office of Transit has in place, your funding is jeopardized. And as you know, both state and federal funds provide approximately 80% of the funding for MRVT. So it's really important that you comply with this if you want to keep the funding for transit in place from the state and federal level. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The goal of any modifications was really to provide for compliance. There was no goal to make any, what I would call, policy changes about how we're going to operate the system or what takes place. Most of the changes here, at least from my perspective, are structural in nature or technical in nature. Again, there's no attempt to make any policy changes about who pays for what, or how does it work, or if an employee is terminated at a certain level or not, if they have an alcohol test, as an example. All of those issues have stayed the same as a part of this policy, at least as compared to your previous policy. Happy to try and answer any questions that members may have.
Questions for Todd? Hearing no questions, the resolution before us on page 48 of the packet calls for adopting an updated FTA drug and alcohol testing policy for the City of St. Peter Transit employees. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
Councilmember Ross.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Rand.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution adopting 2023 municipal fee schedule, beginning with the memo on page 49.
Mayor, members, our goal here is to bring this, and it's annually reviewed by the City Council, and the goal is to have any fee modifications that you put in effective for January 1st. The memo on page 49 outlines the major considerations. There are a couple that are listed on here that we really didn't talk about. So as an example, the number one is removal of the fee for rental of voting booths. We used to have voting booths that we would rent out to townships on occasion for special elections and other things. We just don't do that anymore. We don't really have those booths anymore. So that's been removed. The other one that I'll mention that has actually been in place for a couple of years that we're just cleaning up is the banner that used to be over Highway 169 near Gray Street. That's no longer allowed by DOT, and so we don't have a fee for that anymore. We're not allowed to do that. We were able to keep that for a long time. DOT was very gracious to allow us to have that in place for a number of years. But due to its height, it's no longer doesn't meet the standard that DOT has in place and modified a couple of years ago. The other changes that we have are reflected within the body of the document. I know a couple of you had questions at the workshop, or maybe had questions later. This does not encompass every potential fee that is in place. This is a slightly messy process, and so every fee might not be outlined here that could come up. And so there is the assumption of latitude on the part of staff for some things that come up on an as-needed basis, but we try very diligently to make sure that the major fees, the fees that see action on a pretty regular basis, are included in this list, which runs for a number of pages and runs almost to just about 190 different fees that are in place. I will mention that on a quasi-regular basis, every couple, 2 or 3 years, we make modifications to fees that are impacted by employee costs. That's driven mostly by public works staff and by police departments. So as wages tick up, that fee changes, and we look to do that every couple, 2 or 3 years. The other significant changes that I'd mentioned in here relate to sewer and water access fees, and we talked about that at your workshop, so I think that's articulated clearly within the body of the resolution. Again, that resolution starts on page 51. No other, at least from my perspective, significant changes that are as part of this. You talked at your meeting about one other change that's been provided for as a part of this, and I'm trying to think, somebody sent an email about one too. I'm trying to think what the email was
Airborne.
last week. Yeah, thank you. And then also, I think golf carts. Somebody asked a question about golf carts and the fee for that. Happy to do my best to answer any questions that are here. The process for this is that generally in August or September, a memo goes out to all the department heads, and each of them looks at fees that relate to their department and modifications that are necessary. We compile those, and I review those, and most of those continue through to you. There are some, I don't think there were any this year that I rejected, but most of them come through to you. Again, happy to answer any questions that Mayor or Council might have.
Questions for Todd? Hearing no questions, the very lengthy resolution is printed on pages 51 through 56 of the packet. It is a resolution approving modifications to the municipal fee schedule. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Schuerstein.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our final item of new business is the adoption of a resolution accepting Park Road feasibility study and calling for a public hearing.
Madam Mayor and City Council, we're here tonight to talk about the feasibility report for the Park Road project that runs from South 3rd to South Washington. Before I turn it over to Jeff, just fill you in on some of the information here in that we have been in contact with quite a few of the property owners right now. Just finding out and doing a fact-finding mission on the scope of work for this project. Jeff will go through that in a little bit of detail. We also will be starting tomorrow going back after council takes action, whether it's positive or negative, and working with each homeowner to make a project out of this. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff and we'll talk about the project scope.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Good evening, council members, mayor. As Pete mentioned, this was a project the city council initiated, it was probably a couple months ago. It was something initiated by the city council simply for improving the roadway because the roadway is in poor condition. It's cracked bituminous surface. It's really at a point where it's not even, you can't really seal coat it with much benefit anymore. It's throwing money, good money at bad is what it ends up being. But there's a number of things there with that portion of roadway, this 3-block segment of Park Row, including the curb and gutter, a lot of curb and gutter that's displaced, meaning it's not at the same elevation as the abutting curb and gutter is. Over time that happens, failure because it's just old, it's already 50, 60, even 70 years old in some places. Roadway was last paved, I believe, according to the research, probably about 1974, portion of it was. There's one block that was, there's another 2 blocks in there that were probably last paved before then. But city crews have done a nice job over the years of seal coating those and getting as much life as we can out of those. And, we've got to commend the city for doing that because, seal coating it every 5 years or so extends that roadway life. Usually you're looking for maybe 25 years before you have to reconstruct, and here we've got more than that. So they've done a good job. The existing utilities in the roadway are VCP, the sanitary sewer main it's an old combined sanitary sewer, storm sewer. That was separated in the 1970s. Stormwater was taken from new storm sewer that was installed. And I think it was 1974. That's reinforced concrete pipe, which is a city standard. City crews have televised that and found that to be in good condition. The sanitary sewer also was televised by city crews, and that was also found to be in good condition. Although it's a VCP pipe, it's one of those that is, can be lined at a, fairly economical cost in the future if necessary, if we do see infiltration occurring there. They didn't see any infiltration, any groundwater entering the pipe, because groundwater entering a sanitary sewer pipe is water that we don't want to treat, because that goes to wastewater treatment plant and ends up being treated, and it doesn't need to be treated. So it's treated as waste when it doesn't need to be treated as waste. Anyway, so the only thing the crew saw when they were doing the sanitary sewer inspection was there were a few services that were vitrified clay pipe, sanitary sewer services between the main in the roadway and the homes. So we're proposing, at least as part of this project, to replace those. There are, I think, 4 or 5 water services that are copper. All of them are copper, I should back up. All of them are copper. And those are, there's 4 or 5 that are shallow, less than 5 feet. So there has been some cases in the past where property owners have called the city, requested some assistance for freezing water service. So typically you like to bury those at a minimum 7 feet of cover, and there's some that are less than 5. So with the sanitary sewer service work that's proposed for those that are VCP, it's also proposed to replace those that have those shallow services, and there's 4 or 5 of those that have the shallow water service. Many of the homes along there have a PVC sanitary sewer service already, so they're fine, and they're not proposed to be, there's no sanitary sewer improvements being proposed for them. We are proposing for roadway improvements. The new curb and gutter, right now there's B6, or we call it the high back style curb. It's an 8-inch tall curb. Normal, our new standard curb and gutter is a B6 style, which is only 6 inches tall. The B style, or the high back style, is very common in the 40s, 50s, 60s, but no longer seen, no longer used. It's really not necessary because we have storm sewer now that handles the storm water, whereas previously the high back curb allowed for additional stormwater drainage to occur in the roadway. So with that, we've got curb and gutter improvements that are proposed, a new bituminous roadway, new surface, new aggregate base, and then also some mainline sidewalks, miscellaneous mainline sidewalk improvements. They're there's 6-foot walk on both sides of the roadway for these 3 blocks. Not all the sidewalk is proposed to be removed and replaced, only those segments that are in, I guess, poor condition or offset joints, more than a 1/2 inch. ADA has some requirements out there for offset joints, and whenever we have a walkway that's in reasonable condition, but it has offset joints, or maybe it's cracked and it's just offset, not good condition, a trip hazard, we're proposing to replace those segments of walkway. Ped ramps also in the intersections are proposed to be replaced with new ADA compliant ped ramps with truncated domes. So that is also being proposed as part of the project. And I think one last thing was the hydrant. Looking at adding 1 fire hydrant at the intersection of 5th and Park Row, simply because there is not a hydrant within a block of any direction there. So with that, we had proposed, put the feasibility report together, describe those proposed improvements, and that was included in the packet. And council had an opportunity to review those even at our last meeting too. I know we talked about that. Estimated cost of all the improvements includes a 5% contingency in engineering and then some city admin. Total estimated cost is about $747,940. That includes the construction, like I said, contingency, engineering, admin. Admin is bonding costs, that sort of thing. Of that, about 300, according to the city assessment policy, we're proposing to assess about $388,000 worth. That's based on the city's assessment policy. This report is one of those actions that is required if you want to, as a city, to assess a portion of these project costs. So this is the first step in that process, preparing the report, which we did. And then if you want to move ahead, you would accept the report tonight, and there's a resolution in the packet for that. And then we would call for a hearing on an improvement, a public hearing where residents would come and speak to the city council about the proposed project. I know we do have another informational meeting that's proposed for residents along there. That'll be at the, here at the community center. I think we had scheduled
December 7th?
December 7th in the St. Peter Room between 5 and 7 p.m. So residents will be notified of that meeting in a mailing if the city council does decide to go ahead with the improvement or with the approving the feasibility report and in calling for the improvement hearing. By doing that, it doesn't initiate the project, it doesn't prepare, you don't prepare the plans or specs or anything like that, or bids or any of that. All you're essentially doing is reviewing the report and calling for the hearing, for the opportunity for those that are being assessed for the improvements to come before the city council and speak to the council about the project. As I mentioned, assessments according to the policy, about 380-some thousand is being proposed to be assessed. Assessments range anywhere, they're based on the front foot for your curb and gutter, your roadway improvements, your sidewalk. Then for stormwater improvements, you're based on the drainage area that's contributing from your particular lot. So that's based on frontage and area contributing. But anyway, assessments could range anywhere from, a couple $100s for, a minor amount of storm sewer that's contributing to the project to over 20,000 or so for those lots that are larger than a half block in size. Like I said, that's all according to the city assessment policy. So with that, I think I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the next step on behalf of the next step the council would be is to consider that feasibility report, and then if you want to move ahead to approve that, and then call for the hearing, which we're scheduled the improvement hearing for, I think, the council meeting on December 12th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Real quick, can you give me that number for the total process for it again?
747, 940.
Okay.
Should be a summary on page 76. And as Jeff had mentioned, just as the process is concerned, if the council does approve the feasibility report tonight, we will mail a notice out to each property owner, and then we will begin door-to-door conversations with them on both the assessment process and the waiver process. So there is work outside of the right-of-way, which is not part of the assessment project. That is really the option of the homeowners to complete. We have identified all of those. That is roughly $73,000 if everybody did everything, but we want you to be aware of the total scope and dollars that are impacted. The city's share of this total project is roughly $286,650. So we will have some funding issues, and we'll discuss that should this project move forward.
Pete brings up a good point, if I could, I'm sorry, Mayor. Pete brings up a good point that I forgot to mention was that total improvement cost of $747,000, about 73,000 was, of that is waiver or work that would only be assessed if the property owner requests it. So that's work outside the right-of-way, maybe sanitary sewer service, improving their clay sewer pipe from the right-of-way line to the home, or a water service from the right-of-way line to the home, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I have a question about that. So what does that include? Well, first, my question is, does your team identify some of those needs and then approach the homeowner? You could get this done, or does the homeowner sometimes ask, hey, my pipes are freezing, this is a problem?
Well, we're already aware of the issues that are down there just because of the history and the data that we keep on each address there. So we do approach the homeowners, whether they be a new resident or a 30-year resident, and say, here's what we see. We are going to correct this area. If you desire to do additional work, you can do so. We've identified a cost for that, but we can only do so if you sign the waiver.
Does that include things like the 5-foot deep shallow pipe? Or is that part of our city?
Yeah, any utility within that right-of-way that we've identified as deficient will get fixed underneath the new road. So we need to fix those in the same time frame we do this. It wouldn't do us much good to put a brand new roadway and they're gonna have a water line that's freezing and jeopardizing the residents along the process. there.
Right, so that's really part of our project?
Yes,
The total
that's part of the
project,
assessment,
That
yep.
type of issue, yeah. Thank you.
Other questions?
So all of the services that are inside of the right-of-way, those are all paid for by the adjoining landowner as an assessed cost? Sewer and water?
The ones that are identified as probably not being installed to city standards. So there's quite a few, as Jeff had mentioned, between 29 and a few more for stormwater impact, but the 29 homes along there, there's 5 that we have identified as deficient.
So any sewer and water utility inside the right-of-way, which is a service line, would be paid for by the landowner then?
Correct.
Paid for by that.
Right,
And then I see you have you're putting a new hydrant in too, and you plan on assessing that also to the
Yes.
landowners, not?
that's part of our policy. Our existing assessment policy requires that those impacted by that improvement pay for that. So we went through the assessment process, identified that as a half a block on each side of where the improvement is, because they're receiving additional fire protection or updated fire protection, and those costs were divided. That's how your policy describes it.
But you're not replacing the water main,
We are not,
6-inch water main?
right?
Your standard is 8, correct?
Correct.
So it's 2 inches deficient.
Ben?
So you said that we've got VCP pipe in the roadway right now,
Yep.
right?
Correct.
And the sewers that we're looking to have homeowners replace to their home is VCP, although we're not replacing the VCP that's in the roadway.
Most of the individual sewer lines are cast iron or plastic. About half of them have been replaced since they originally went in, so they failed at one time or another. They may have a leaking joint or improper connection at the main, and so our goal here would be, as long as we're in that area, we will do a spot repair to that connection. But the clay tile that is in the street right-of-way that serves all of those homes has great alignment. When we look at that as far as the televising, we would probably line the project without digging it because it's the deepest utility in that street. And so our goal would be is that in the future, if we do have a failure along that line on the main line, we would line it.
Other questions? Hearing no additional questions, the resolution before us on page 5 of the packet calls for accepting a feasibility report and calling for a public hearing on improvements to Park Row, South 3rd Street to South Washington Avenue. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to reports, we have nothing to report tonight. We do have a report from City Council member Carrie Johnson.
I just wanted to provide a brief report. I attended the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Fall Conference. The coalition is they advocate for greater Minnesota cities, and we're a member, and so we pay quite a large membership fee to participate or to be a part of their work and to be advocated for. I decided to at the last conference, I talked to a few members about serving on the board of the coalition, and they have had a retreat right previous to the fall, the day before the fall conference, so they kind of tack everything on. We hear from a variety of speakers at the fall conference. That's always really informative, but most importantly, we adopt the policy positions for the upcoming legislative session. So a couple weeks ago, Emily reported, Councilmember Bruflat reported on her work on the Environment Committee. And so what happens after she attends that committee, and I attended the Economic Development Committee, and we worked on the language and the priorities, it goes to a membership meeting at the end of the fall conference that we approve or amend with changes. So those policy positions were adopted and would have been emailed out to all of you by CGMC. Another really important topic we talked a lot about is the makeup of the legislature in the upcoming legislative session and how, I guess, representation shifts towards metro-based representatives. And so it's really important that we have a strategy in place and we talk as a council about what do we want to talk about as our priorities, what do we want to ask for, what do we want our legislators to know about St. Peter, because they are representing us, and if we have kind of one voice, we can share with them what's important to us in St. Peter. So this CGMC has a number of events. One is coming up, Legislative Action Day. It's Wednesday, January 25th. I plan on going, and I hope other council members will join me too. They also have their summer conference in Thief River Falls. It's a long drive, but it's July 26th through the 28th. Like I said, we put in a lot towards the membership. The more we can participate is great, and be in the know of what they're doing to work for us and other cities in greater Minnesota. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carrie, and thanks for representing St. Peter. Are there any reports from any other members of the city council tonight? Hearing none, we will move on to reports from the city administrator. Todd.
Madam Mayor, I have one that I want to mention to the council, and this is for the 2023 APPA, American Public Power Association Rally. That will occur in Washington, D.C., February 27th through March 1st. I'd encourage you all over the next week to take a close look at your calendar and see if you're interested. Under state law and city policy, if you're traveling out of state, there needs to be a resolution that's provided for that. And so my goal would be, hopefully next Monday, you can get your calendars together and decide who's going. In the past, typically you've had 2 elected officials. On occasion, you've had 3. And so that's kind of typically what the council's done related to it. I could talk a little bit more if you'd like, and certainly we can discuss it at your workshop, the value of this opportunity and how that in the past has cycled around council members. But again, I'd like you to take a look at your calendar, and so I'd love to be able to get that kind of decided, who's available, who's interested, maybe who's not interested, so that we can make sure that resolution gets put at your December meeting, or at least one of your first meetings in January. And then from a practical standpoint, make sure that we can get an airplane ticket in a room for you and those types of things, which book up pretty quick. This is a major event within the Washington, D.C. area, and lots of public power folks. It's a wonderful education opportunity, not only from the power standpoint, but also your partners in Minnesota that operate electric utilities and other utilities, and certainly the SIMPA group, and getting to know not only that staff, but the other SIMPA members that you are connected with another 17 communities, and make decisions that impact electricity, renewables, and costs for your ratepayers within St. Peter. So anyway, that's my pitch. Take a look at your calendars. Would love to see you come back on Monday with some additional information on what you're interested or what your availability might be. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Hearing no further reports, is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Swim banquet.
Yes, ma'am.
Last night?
There's
So,
Elected Leaders Institute Foundation.
kind of miss swimming a little bit than I did.
We've all done the foundation.
2 hours.